Syria is facing a fresh round of sanctions targeting its oil exports after EU countries agreed to adopt an embargo. France, Britain and the US are also calling for the UN Security Council to condemn violence in the country. Well, RT's Daniel Bushell is live for us now in Brussels. Daniel, so the EU's upping the ante, isn't it, as this new round of sanctions will hit Syria's oil industry?
Yes, well, EU has a new round of sanctions targeting Syria's oil industry, and it comes into force only on 15th of November, however, because Italy has asked for an extension to allow its existing contracts to be completed. The EU does import 90% of Syria's oil, which accounts for a quarter of the country's income. So with tourism to the country now dead, this really chokes Syria economically. Libya's oil reserves have been secured over this week, as we've seen, by EU powers. So experts here say the EU can safely go ahead and cut off its Syrian supplies without affecting deliveries to Europe. As well as oil sanctions, the EU also plans to expand the list of people with an asset and travel ban. Another 4 top officials have been added to that list. France and the US want stronger UN resolution now condemning the violence in Syria. Russia is against any revolution of such kind. It insists on social and economic reforms in the country.
And Daniel, the EU clearly concerned with the situation inside Syria, but how good is their knowledge, do you think, of what's going on there?
Well, most foreign journalists are banned from the country, so it's unclear where they're getting that information from. There have been reports, Western reports, that some 2,000 people killed since March in anti-government protests. There is some amateur footage, some grainy footage that no one's verified. Some, in fact, think these aren't actually anti-government protests, that they're infighting between religious groups in the country. Our correspondent reports from Syria.
We're in one of the poorest areas of the city of Homs. This is where generally people are said together and then proceed on to the center of Homs in demonstrations. This is where most of the unrests happen. As you can see, this is a very lively area. Every time something like television happens, it's more of an event. Now, when we talked to people, they told us that majority of the unrests that do happen in the city happen because of the religious basis. They're not against the government. They're not for any political matter. This is most of the things that do happen in Homs, most of the controversy that does happen in Homs happens on a religious basis, on the differences between the Alawi and the Sunni Muslims in the city. Now, there have been no tanks, none that we have seen. We did see some army presence which are trying to keep the area under control in order to prevent the unrest between the religious groups. But other than that, we haven't seen or heard any shooting. We haven't seen any tanks. And life really seems to be running the way it's usually runs until, of course, the television crews show up and start filming in the middle of the day. Now, we also have been in one of the most dangerous areas of Homs, in Alhambra, right around the time of the noon prayer. Unfortunately, in Syria, the period of the noon prayer has become somewhat a traditional time for people to take to the streets and for violence to break out. But we were lucky there was no violence this time around.